The document arrived in California on a Tuesday. No phone call preceded it, no warning, just a palace seal and 3 pages that would rewrite 2 childhoods. Prince Harry opened the envelope in his kitchen while his children played, in the next room. He read the first paragraph. Then he read it again, slower this time, as though the words might rearrange themselves into something less final. They didn't. Archie and Lilibet had been erased, not from the line of succession, not from their titles, but from something far more intimate, the list that decides which grandchildren spend Christmas morning with the king. Before we show you what happened next, subscribe so you never miss the stories the palace doesn't want told. Harry's hands didn't shake. That came later. First came the paralysis, the specific stillness that follows discovering you've been removed from your own family's future. The language was bureaucratic, clinical. Revised arrangements for sovereign-hosted gatherings. Discontinuation of automatic inclusion. Effective immediately. Meghan found him still standing in the same spot 20 minutes later. She didn't ask what was wrong. His face had already answered. He handed her the pages without speaking. She read them twice too. The Duchess of Sussex had spent years bracing for palace cruelty, but she'd always imagined it would be loud, aggressive, public. This was worse. This was institutional disappearance. The kind that happens on paper, in private, where no one can witness the violence. "They're 5 and 3, Meghan finally said. Harry's voice came out flat, emptied. "They know." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Meghan walked to the window, crossed her arms, and asked the question that would define everything that followed. "Do the children know they've been cut?" Harry shook his head. "They don't even know they were ever in." That's when the rage arrived. Across an ocean, King Charles III sat in a room most of the public will never see. It's not the throne room, not the balcony, not the gilded chambers where state business is performed for cameras. This is the small study adjacent to his private apartments. The one without portraits, without staff, without anyone who might later be called to testify about what crosses his face when he believes he's alone. He'd signed the order here, not in anger, not in haste, in something far more dangerous, certainty. The king had spent 18 months trying to find a compromise. 18 months of suspended invitations, postponed visits, and private negotiations that collapsed the moment they touched Harry's lawyers or Meghan's publicist. He'd offered Balmoral last summer. A private week. No press, no expectations, just grandparents, parents, and children attempting something close to normal. The offer had been returned with conditions, security protocols, independent accommodations, clauses about premature departure. Charles had read the list and understood that his son no longer trusted the institution enough to bring his children inside it unprotected. The realization hadn't made him angry. It made him tired. So he'd done what monarchs do when family becomes ungovernable. He'd redefined the family. Archie and Lilibet would keep their titles, their place in succession, their theoretical claim to the legacy bearing their last name. But they would not keep their seats at the table. Queen Camilla had been the only person in the room when he'd made the decision final. She'd asked him one question, quietly, while his pen hovered over the signature line. "Will you be able to live with this?" Charles had answered without looking up. "I'm already living with worse." Then he'd signed. But here's what the palace never released, what the press never discovered, and what Harry wouldn't learn until much later. Charles had written something else that same night. 2 letters, sealed separately. Addressed in his own hand. One to a boy who'd been named for his history. One to a girl who'd been named for his mother. He'd placed them in a drawer and told no one they existed. Harry demanded a conversation within hours. Not through private secretaries, not through carefully worded statements released to preferred journalists. He wanted his father, on the phone, now. Charles almost refused. The king had learned, through years of painful repetition, that arguments with Harry no longer produced understanding. They produced transcripts, leaked details, palace sources who somehow knew exactly what was said behind closed doors. But he took the call, because underneath the crown, the constitutional authority, and the institutional exhaustion, there was still a father who remembered holding his youngest son the night his mother died. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. No aides were present. No one recorded it. No official summary was ever produced. But people in adjoining rooms reported hearing raised voices, both of them. Harry demanded to know how his father could punish children for their parents' decisions. Charles replied that he wasn't punishing anyone. He was protecting the monarchy from becoming a negotiation every time the family tried to gather. "They're your grandchildren," Harry said. "They're also your leverage," Charles answered. The line went silent. Then Harry said something that would haunt his father for months. You've turned into exactly what she was running from. She. He didn't need to clarify. There's only one she that still detonates conversations in that family. Charles's voice changed after that. People nearby said it became quieter, more controlled. If you truly believe that, the king said, then perhaps you're right to keep them away. Harry hung up. Neither man apologised. What Harry didn't know, what he wouldn't discover until the story went public, was that his brother had endorsed the removal before their father signed it. Prince William hadn't suggested it, but when Charles had asked his heir whether the decision was defensible, William had said yes. Not because he wanted to hurt his nephews. Because he'd spent years watching his own children, George, Charlotte and Louis, learn that family gatherings could become media dissections, that private moments could become public property, that loving your uncle might mean appearing in a Netflix documentary you never consented to. William had 3 children who needed to trust that Christmas would remain Christmas. He'd made a calculation. And Archie and Lilibet had lost. The Prince of Wales never publicly commented on the decision, but palace insiders began noticing a pattern. Every time William was asked about Harry, he mentioned his own children first. The message was clear: I'm protecting mine. When Harry finally learned his brother had supported the erasure, he didn't rage. He did something colder. He stopped referring to William by name in private conversations. Now his brother was the heir. Institutional, formal, distanced. The exact language the palace had used to remove his children. Meghan didn't release a statement. She didn't call friends in media, didn't authorise sources close to the Duchess, didn't appear on a podcast to process her pain in real time. Her silence confused people. The woman who'd spoken so openly about royal mistreatment, who'd named the institution's failures in interviews watched by millions. Why wasn't she fighting now? Because she'd learned something in the years since leaving. Speaking gave the palace a target. Silence gave them a mirror. Every day she said nothing. The decision looked crueler. Every headline that tried to justify removing children from their grandfather's Christmas, the monarchy explained itself into a deeper hole. Meghan's strategy wasn't forgiveness. It was letting the palace lose the argument without her saying a word. But privately, she did one thing. She started a journal for her children. Every article, every headline, every defence the palace released, she saved them. One day, Archie and Lilibet would ask why they'd never spent Christmas with their grandfather. And she would show them exactly what happened, not her version. History. The story broke on a Friday. By Saturday morning, Buckingham Palace was surrounded by people holding signs, flowers and photographs of 2 children most of them had never seen in person. The image that dominated coverage wasn't of protest. It was that of a grandmother, white-haired, elderly and unsteady on her feet, placing a child's drawing at the palace gates. It showed 2 stick figures standing outside a castle. A reporter asked her why she'd come. Because someone has to show up for those babies, she said. Inside, the palace communications team tried to control the narrative. They released statements emphasising that titles hadn't been removed, that the line of succession remained unchanged, that this was about calendar management, not familial rejection. The public didn't buy it. Polling showed 63% of Britons believed the decision was cruel. Even royalist commentators struggled to defend it. One historian said, on live television, the crown has survived scandals, abdications and divorces, but it's never survived looking petty. Charles watched none of it. He'd given one instruction to his staff: I will not justify love through press release. But the silence made it worse, because the only story being told was the one he refused to correct. 3 weeks after the decision went public, Harry received a package, no return address, just a palace postmark and a note from a private secretary he half recognised. His Majesty asked that these be delivered personally. Inside were 2 envelopes, handwritten, sealed with wax. One said Archie, one said Lilibet. Harry didn't open them, not yet. First, he called his father. Charles answered on the second ring. Why now? Harry asked. Because you'll give them to the children one day, Charles said. And I need them to know I wrote these before the world made it a strategy. There was a pause. I'm not using them to fix this, Harry said. I know. I'm not releasing them. I know. Then why send them? Charles exhaled. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of something he'd been holding alone. Because being removed from a list shouldn't mean being removed from a grandfather's love. And one day they'll need to know the difference. Harry didn't respond. He hung up, but he didn't throw the letters away. Harry opened them after Meghan had gone to bed. He didn't read them aloud, didn't photograph them, didn't share their contents with anyone. But those who know him say he cried, not from reconciliation, from grief, Because the letters were everything the decision wasn't: warm, personal. Aching with the specific tenderness of a grandfather who knows he's chosen duty over presents and will regret it quietly for the rest of his life. Charles had written about what he hoped they'd become, what he saw in their names, what he wished he could teach them about resilience, history, and carrying a legacy that doesn't always fit comfortably. He wrote about his own childhood, about being raised inside an institution that prioritised the crown over the child. And he made a promise: you will always have a grandfather who loves you, even when the shape of that love looks like distance. Harry placed the letters in a fireproof safe, not to protect them from destruction, to protect them from being used as weapons. The removal was never reversed. Archie and Lilibet did not appear on the next holiday list, or the one after that. Christmas at Sandringham continued without them, but something quieter shifted. Charles began sending private birthday messages, not through staff, through direct handwritten notes that arrived without palace branding. Harry didn't acknowledge them publicly, but he didn't return them either. William maintained his position. The future king believed the boundary was necessary, and he refused to apologise for protecting the stability his own children needed. Meghan continued documenting, and the children grew older, still unaware that they'd once been part of something they were now formally excluded from. Here's what the palace didn't anticipate. Removing Archie and Lilibet from the holiday list didn't end the Sussex problem. It created a new narrative. Now, every future photograph of the royal family gathered for Christmas would be studied for who was missing. Every image of George, Charlotte, Eudis, and Louis with their grandfather would be haunted by the two children who should have been there. The decision had been framed as closure. Instead, it became a permanent open wound. Because absence, it turns out, is louder than presence. And every time the king appeared with his grandchildren, the public would count. 5, not 7. Charles had won the institutional argument, but he'd lost the story. And in a monarchy that survives on public sentiment, story is everything. There's a photograph that never made it to publication. It was taken by a staff member during the first Christmas after the removal. It shows King Charles standing near a window at Sandringham, alone, while his family gathers in another room. In his hand is a photo frame turned face down. No one asked what the picture was, but those who saw his expression said he looked like a man attending a funeral for people still alive. The decision had been final. The consequences would be permanent. And somewhere in California, 2 children played in the California sun, unaware that an ocean away, a grandfather was learning to live with a choice he believed was right and would regret forever. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. The royal family's most painful chapters are the ones they never speak about. We do.